Well, welcome. Welcome, Mayor Bowser, President DeGioia, honored guests, and above all, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. So today, in recognition of the Congresswoman's extraordinary career of service in academia, in law, and in the government, her profound dedication to the Law Center, this university, and this city, and her lifelong heroic and inspiring fight for justice, we are honored to dedicate this space. The Georgetown Law Center Green will be named the Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton Green. So we've got a great crowd. We actually needed another tent to have everyone here. And in addition to the mayor, from whom we'll be hearing, and President DeGioia, who will be speaking, I'd like to recognize we'll be joined shortly by the Congresswoman's family, her son John, her daughter-in-law Tiffany, and her grandchildren, Brendan and Justin. Former D.C. Attorney General Irv Nathan is here. I think Beverly Perry, very distinguished graduate of the law school, our Paul Dean Award winner and the mayor's senior advisor, will be here. Many members of the Georgetown Law Alumni Board and Board of Visitors. Laura Newland, the director of the D.C. Department of Aging and Community Living and a Georgetown Law alum. Mila Kaufman, the executive director of D.C. Health Link, which is D.C.'s Obamacare Health Exchange, a Georgetown Law alum. Congressman Wynn. The Reverend Ezio Marchetto, pastor of Holy Rosary Church, and the Holy Rosary Church Board is here. And though he could not be physically present, I was just informed that Congressman Steny Hoyer has tweeted about this. So if you're on his tweets, he said, "I join in congratulating my friend at Eleanor Norton as she's honored by at Georgetown Law today for her service to the District of Columbia and our nation. I am honored to work with her in Congress." So a round of applause for all of the attendees. So this is a historic occasion. Georgetown Law was founded in 1870. And so we're now almost on the cusp of our 150th anniversary. So as we prepared for the 150th anniversary, we thought about it and we thought, who are the giants in our history who we should be recognizing? So we have two great spaces at the Law Center. Behind the McDonough building, we have the green between McDonough and the Williams Library. And that will be named, we can see if I can speak impromptu. That will be named after Paul Dean, who was the dean of the Law Center, who we think of as the founder of the modern Georgetown Law School, who brought us from East Street here. So later this year, we'll be dedicating the green space between McDonough and Williams in honor of Paul Dean. Today, a round of applause for Paul Dean. And today, we honor Congresswoman Norton by naming in her honor what we've called the Tower Green. Now, this is the part of the campus that's closest to the Capitol. So it's very fitting that this is the part of the campus that we're naming after the Congresswoman. She was, and I'll be talking a little bit more about her career in a few minutes, a member of our faculty for 36 years. So she's a giant in the law. She's a giant in the fight for justice. She's a giant in the history of DC, and she's a giant in the history of Georgetown law. And so this is the space where students play football, where they study, where they congregate. This is our great space. And it will be named in honor of someone who's a giant in our history, who's a personal hero of mine, who's a personal hero of all of us here today, Congresswoman Norton. So, I'm going to be introducing President DeGioia, and we're honored to have him here. Then, after the president, Mayor Bowser. And when we told Mayor Bowser that we were dedicating this green in honor of the Congresswoman, which was about 2 months ago, President DeGioia and I, she was speaking at a Georgetown alumni event, a university board event. She said, "I have to be there." So we're so delighted to have you here. I'll deliver some formal comments. The Congresswoman will then speak. And then, if you look behind us, we are going to, in honor of the Congresswoman, in addition to dedicating this space, we are going to put a bench for the students that's being designed right now, and I'll present you a picture of the bench with the tribute, which is really will stand forever as an embodiment of your career. So I will present the picture, the rendering. We will then do a ceremonial groundbreaking, and then we'll have a reception, which I hope you'll all come to in the Hotung Sport and Fitness. And when you're inside, we have a great, we were just looking at it, great photographic display of the Congresswoman's career, starting with pictures of her as a very young child, going through the arc of her career, and then concluding with last year's graduation ceremony at which she received an honorary degree. So it's a great day. I'm delighted to have you here. I'm delighted that we have this opportunity to honor the Congresswoman. And now, let me present President DeGioia.
Well, thank you very much, Bill. And we're grateful to you for your exceptional leadership here at our Law Center and for your contributions in bringing us all together today. I want to thank you all for your presence on this very special afternoon in the life of our community. It's a privilege to be here as we come together to dedicate our Tower Green space at the heart of our Law Center campus in recognition of an extraordinary leader in our university, in our community, in our city, and in our nation. Congresswoman Norton, we are honored by this opportunity to memorialize your leadership in our city in this central place on our law campus, a place where we have been so grateful to benefit from your insights, your commitment to our students, and your leadership in promoting a more just and equitable society. We're especially privileged to have your family with us today, John and Tiffany, and Brendan and Justin. And I wish to offer a special word of thanks to the many special guests joining us today. Mayor Bowser, who I'll introduce in just a moment, our current and former city government officials and leaders in our nonprofit community who we're honored to work with and alongside of in support of the people of our city. We're honored to have all of you with us here today. I'd also like to welcome members of the board at our Law Center, our Law Alumni Board, our students, alumni, faculty, and staff, and the members of our DC community who have gathered with us. I want to thank you all for your presence today. As our students walk this lawn, as they gather in conversation, as they pause for a moment of respite between classes, as they travel in between their places of work, our law clinics, through our neighborhood, whenever they are here, they will be reminded of an extraordinary lawyer, teacher, and public servant. Since the earliest days of her career, as a lawyer advocating for gender equity, since joining our faculty in 1982, since her election to Congress in 1990, throughout all of the dimensions of her career, she has demonstrated for all of us what it means to live a life of service. A champion of civil rights, an advocate for our city and for the cause of statehood for the District of Columbia. For all of us, Congresswoman Norton, it's a privilege to honor you today and to ensure that this place on campus bears your name and honors your lifetime of contributions now and into the future. And to offer reflections this afternoon in honor of Congresswoman Norton, we're very grateful to have with us our mayor, Muriel Bowser, recently elected to a second term. This November, she became the first woman to achieve a second term and the first mayor to earn a second term in 16 years in our city. During her time in office, she has focused on promoting the safety, strength, and health of neighborhoods across the 8 wards of our city through activities like the DC Infrastructure Academy, a partnership between government, utility, unions, university and private sector partners to enhance pathways to jobs for DC residents. She's also been vocal in her support of immigrant communities here in Washington, establishing the Immigrant Justice Legal Services Grant Program. And we're pleased to partner with her Office of Returning Citizen Affairs to create a paralegal program for returning citizens at our School for Continuing Studies. Providing paralegal job training for formerly incarcerated residents. I know on behalf of all of us, I wish to thank her for the time she has spent with our community, especially for her presence here today to mark this very special occasion. It's a wonderful privilege on this occasion to introduce our mayor, Mayor Bowser.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am very delighted to be here to celebrate an awesome woman, lawyer, teacher, congresswoman, and fierce fighter for the residents of Washington, D.C., my friend Eleanor Holmes Norton. I am also very honored to join you, President DeGioia and Dean Traynor, and all of the friends of the Georgetown Law Center today for this special dedication. We are grateful for many reasons. You heard the president talk about a very important partnership that we have with Georgetown, as well as a partnership that Georgetown has with DC Public Schools and many other programs and initiatives that when we call on the university answers. Georgetown plays a very critical role in our city, employing hundreds of DC residents, being a critical member of the business and higher education community, and representing us very well all around the world. I happened to be in China, and I looked up, and who did I see? President DeGioia. So many places, even across our nation, in the administration, this one, future ones, past ones, this Congress, future ones and past ones, you'll go down many halls and offices, and who do you find? Georgetown alum. And so in a recent meeting with the president, I said, I don't have anything to ask you to do with that immense list of contacts right now, Mr. President, but one day I might. So you clearly have a lot to be proud of in this 149-year history and have graduated many outstanding people. But Eleanor Holmes Norton stands tops among them in our view. We are, of course, used to seeing her fighting for us in D.C., especially as she continues to build a record of support for H.R. 51. This is her bill to make Washington, D.C. the 51st state. She has already secured 203 co-sponsors in the House, and I was happy to see that tweet from Steny Hoyer because we have some work to do with him. And we are also excited and ready for the House to hold the hearing, and we have been assured that that hearing will happen in the near future. Congresswoman frequently reminds me that certainly statehood and making Washingtonians equal Americans is top on her agenda. But she spends each and every day making our city better by reclaiming land from the federal government and making that land places for Washingtonians to live, work, and for people to contribute to our bottom line, shall we say. Just think of what D.C. would be without our new waterfront at the wharf, or without new jobs and housing opportunities and federal jobs at St. Elizabeth's, or without upcoming partnerships to focus on children's health at the former Walter Reed Medical Campus. Those are the things that Eleanor has been able to do for us to make sure that she is getting the best out of the federal government for Washington, D.C. She also has used her enormous brain and talent and intellect to keep the hands off of D.C. that don't belong on D.C. You know, the people that we didn't elect. And it has been a privilege working alongside her to defend D.C. values and to protect the critical federal investments that make D.C. stronger and create new opportunities for every Washingtonian, whether they have been here for 5 minutes or 3 generations like Eleanor, and now 5 generations sitting in the front row. But what some residents may not know is that in addition to representing D.C. in Congress, that the Congresswoman has dedicated much of her life to teaching law. And I know that she has also used those skills in teaching her colleagues about the law and about how the laws that they make affect us here in the District of Columbia. I'm sure that you are fantastic teachers of debate, more importantly, winning debates. And if you ever come up against Eleanor Holmes Norton in a debate, just sit down. Or at least be right. She came to Congress as a tenured professor of law here at Georgetown and continued to teach, as you've heard, for some 36 years. Who better to share her wealth of knowledge with aspiring lawyers than a civil rights activist, a lawyer who argued before the Supreme Court, a chair of New York City's Commission on Human Rights, and the first woman to chair the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Congresswoman Norton is an icon not only for her hometown, but also for this prestigious campus. Naming this beautiful space in her honor is befitting her work to promote the study of law and will continue to inspire future lawyers. I know this green will be named for Eleanor Holmes Norton, but a little piece of it, I know, celebrates her hometown, Washington, D.C. And for that, we are grateful to Eleanor, and we are grateful to you on behalf of all 700,000 Washingtonians. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mayor. What a wonderful speech, and thank you, President DeGioia. And now I get to introduce our Congresswoman. But first, let me talk about how this came to be about. So we're about to celebrate our 150th anniversary, and so anniversaries are a time for reflection. What is it that defines you? What is it that makes you special? And what we realized was that there are 4 traits that define Georgetown law and that are embodied by this campus. The first, obviously, is academic excellence. This is a great place of learning. If you look around, you can see the classrooms and the clinics and the faculty offices. It's a great place in which students are challenged and grow. That's at our core. But there are other law schools that are about academic excellence. What Georgetown brings beyond academic excellence is something that, actually, if you walk out the front door of the law school, you get a sense of it, right? The mayor talked about Washington, D.C. We are of Washington, D.C. You look up You look up the street, you look up New Jersey Avenue, and you see the Capitol. And that's because this is a law school that's very much about this city and what this city has to offer. And we are involved in the lives and the dreams of the city. And then if you look straight ahead, you see Union Station. And it's interesting. When a few years ago, I was at a meeting of Jesuit law school deans, and one of the other deans said, the Jesuit law schools are the law schools that were built where the train tracks end, right? Because we're the law schools that are about access and opportunity. We're the law schools for immigrants, for people who work during the day. Georgetown Law is when we started 150 years ago, we were a night school. We are the only great law school that started as a night school, that was built where the train tracks end, because this is a place of opportunity. And this is a place that's about justice. So, walk around the campus, you see the Capitol, no more inspiring sight. Look down the street, you see Union Station, because we're about access and opportunity. And then when you walk around to our library on Massachusetts Avenue, you see our motto, our mission. Law is but the means. Justice is the end. This is a law school that is founded and dedicated to justice. So as we were thinking about the 150th, we realized that those are the principles that define us. And then we thought, who embodies those principles? And more than anyone else, and this is an extraordinary community, we have 40,000 members, but in a way that is unique and powerful, Eleanor Holmes Norton embodies each of those principles. And that's why we're here today. Academic excellence. Just think about it. Think about the demands of being in Congress. And yet, for decades, as she was in Congress, the Congresswoman would come here and teach our students. Now, I have to say, I was thinking about it. So, actually, I was watching the TV show, which some of you may have seen, Good Girls Revolt, which is about, it's a great show. It's about the women of Newsweek and their struggle, because Newsweek had a rule that women couldn't be reporters. Who was the lawyer who defended them and got that rule changed? Eleanor Holmes Norton. And in the very first scene, when she comes in and she appears before the reporters to tell them that what's happening is illegal, they're both motivated and inspired, and one says, she's terrifying. So can you imagine that you're a young law student and you have the opportunity to study with an icon, a giant in the law? The temptation for somebody with struggling so much to just show up in class, anybody else would have yielded to that. Congresswoman Norton, you talk to her students, and you find, first of all, what a rigorous teacher she was. You hear about the comments that she gave them on papers that were unlike anything that they saw from anybody else. She was both teaching them how to think, because she is in every way so committed to the importance of education and the way in which it equips people to make a difference. She taught them to think, and she inspired them. So in a place of academic excellence, we wanted to honor someone who is so profoundly dedicated to academic excellence. And D.C. The mayor talked about D.C. Congresswoman Norton is a fourth-generation Washingtonian. We were talking about before, this is an extraordinary story. Her great-grandfather, Richard, was enslaved and escaped. And he came to Washington, D.C. as a runaway. and he found freedom and work on the streets of Washington, D.C., even though there was still slavery in Washington, D.C. It's an extraordinary story. And then her grandfather, also named Richard, was also a pioneer, was one of the first African-American firefighters in the District of Columbia. And then it continued. Her parents were from Washington, D.C. She's the daughter of a school teacher and a civil servant. She grew up in D.C. She graduated from Dunbar High School when it was still segregated. She is in every way a product of D.C. and embodies the greatness of the city. In her 30 years in Congress, you heard the mayor talk about some of the extraordinary things that she's done. It's just a list that goes on and on and on. So among some of the mayor talked about many of the things, but she also provided financial assistance for all D.C. high school graduates to attend any public U.S. college or university and many private colleges or university. She got a D.C. homebuyer tax credit, D.C. business incentives, development of a 55-acre Southeast Federal Center. Victory after victory without a vote. Victory after victory without a vote. And she is campaigning so powerfully and with such conviction, and we look forward to the day, we hope soon, when she leads us to statehood in Washington, D.C. Two final points. Access and opportunity. That's been her career. That's been her career. Her dedication to opening doors, to giving people the opportunity to flourish and to realize their dreams. So the mayor talked, she was the head of the New York City Human Rights Commission. She fought for the women at Newsweek. She was the head of EEOC and released the first official declaration that sexual harassment was a form of sex discrimination that violated federal civil rights laws. And she continues to fight. She's campaigned to create a national commission to combat sexual harassment in the workplace. Nobody has been a more forceful or more effective champion for opportunity and access. And finally, justice. Law is but the means, justice is the end. Who has embodied our mission, our motto, more effectively than Congresswoman Norton? So when we decided to dedicate this space, the choice was obvious. Who embodies our commitment to academic excellence, to opportunity, to DC, and to justice? Eleanor Holmes Norton. And so we are here today. We are honored, we are privileged to dedicate this great space to someone who embodies our mission, to someone who has been a member of this community for almost 40 years, and who is our champion, Eleanor Holmes Norton.
Oh, thank you very much. After hearing what Dean Traynor has said, what Mayor Bowser has said, what President DeGioia has said, if I had any sense, I would say, everybody, let's go have a drink now. I can't thank you enough for the remarks you've made this afternoon. I see so many members of the faculty that it was my great privilege to call colleagues when I taught at the law school. I see some young enough to be students at the law school, alumni, and of course my family. In Congress, I spend a fair amount of my time honoring and recognizing and saluting and loving my constituents, my institutions, and organizations of every kind. I write about them in the Congressional Record, in letters of congratulations, of sympathy, and yes, sometimes of empathy. I have no trouble writing these remarks or statements. All I have to do is think about what I know of them or have learned about them. That's why I got stuck. I got stuck thinking about what to say today. Stuck. Because the Georgetown University Law Center has already not only awarded me an honorary degree, but also gave me the honor of delivering the commencement address just last year. Stuck. Because Georgetown has already recognized me when I was awarded tenure, a prize without equal, or as I often told my students, it was harder to get tenure than it was to get elected to Congress. Stuck. Because Georgetown has already afforded me incomparable intellectual stimulation when I engaged in frequent Socratic fun with some of the best students in the country, teaching labor law, employment law, and negotiation for lawyers. Stuck. Because Georgetown, after I was elected to Congress, permitted me to continue teaching on a part-time schedule consistent with my congressional duties, assuring continued exercise of my brain, which is not always guaranteed by service in the House of Representatives. So I'm stuck. But that doesn't keep me from being grateful. Grateful for the creative way you have chosen to recognize me. Grateful for the deep thoughtfulness that went into the design of the installation. Grateful that my association with the law school and with the law itself will not be forgotten. Grateful to offer my appreciation and that of my son John and his wife Tiffany and my two grandchildren Justin and Brendan. Grateful to say the words that have no equal. Thank you.